But we start this hour with the Republican and Democratic frontrunners for the 2016 presidential race. Donald Trump is back in rare form, and we'll have more on that in a moment because Hillary Clinton, she's got a two-front problem on her hand. A new poll shows for the first time that she may be losing in the New Hampshire primary to Democratic opponent Bernie Sanders. Potentially more damaging, however, are the latest developments in her ongoing email saga. After months of refusing Republican requests, she has finally agreed to hand over the private email server she used while Secretary of State. Also being handed over, a thumb drive with copies of the emails. Meanwhile, a government report finds that 2 of the emails already turned over contained information deemed top secret. Well, that's a much higher standard of classification than previously known. And moments ago, my colleague spoke with a congressman at the forefront of the demanding a Clinton turn over the servers, South Carolina's Trey Dowdy. Take a listen.
For 20 months, those emails were neither too burdensome nor too cumbersome. It was only when our committee began to ask the State Department for her emails that she said, you know what, it's been 20 months. Gosh, I really need to get rid of this stuff. I just don't think that passes the laugh test, but I haven't had a chance to ask her about it either.
Join me now from Washington is NBC News correspondent Kristen Walker. And Kristen, really can be kind of confusing to understand this, partly because, you know, the Clinton camp is arguing that this is kind of a bureaucratic fight between the State Department and then the intelligence community as what is designated as top secret. So given that, how big of a blow is this for the Hillary camp?
Well, every time there's another headline about the emails, it's a blow to the Hillary camp, Francis. Just to break it all down, because as you point out, this is very complicated. The Hillary campaign says, look, any email that was classified was designated as such after the fact. Secretary Clinton has been adamant when she's been pressed about this issue that she never sent or received an email that was designated as classified. I was traveling on the campaign trail with her back in July when we pressed her about this very issue. Take a listen to what she had to say.
I am confident that I never sent nor received any information that was classified at the time it was sent and received.
But the broader problem here, Francis, is that it all raises a question. If there were, in fact, 2 top secret, highly classified emails on her server, were they secured in the same way that a government server would have been secured, for example? That is one of the key concerns that federal investigators are going to be looking into. But again, back to your initial question, every time the Clinton campaign is answering questions about Secretary Clinton's emails, they're not focusing on the policy issues that they want to be focused on, things like creating jobs. Yesterday, she was in New Hampshire talking about her plan to lower the cost of a college education. Instead, that all gets overshadowed by this ongoing flap. It is taking a toll in the polls. You have a majority of people, according to recent polls, who say that they don't think they can trust her. That's something that is going to be challenging in the months ahead. And clearly, this email issue doesn't seem to be going anywhere. So it could be a nagging problem well into the 2016 race.
All right,
Francis?
part of this 1-2 punch, Kristen. Not only do you have this email saga continuing with that revelation that she has released, the thumb drive, and also that those 2 emails were classified as top secret. Also, this poll here, the latest in New Hampshire, trailing now behind Bernie Sanders. What more is it telling us?
Well, it's a pretty stunning poll. We all woke up to it. Bernie Sanders, 44% primary Democratic voters choosing him as compared to Hillary Clinton, who has 37%. It's really important to point out, Francis, this is a small poll. Only about 400 people were sampled. However, it's significant insofar as it points to this trend. We're seeing Bernie Sanders get really big crowds. He is getting a lot of progressive Democrats who aren't sure that Hillary Clinton lines up with their views when it comes to big issues like the economy, like banks, that sort of thing. So this seems to be a trend. The Clinton campaign is going to have to address it. And by the way, they are addressing it. Secretary Clinton has been trying to weigh in on issues that she thinks progressives care about. So this is something, though, that continues to dog her campaign. And of course, back in 2008, she was expected to win, and we all know what happened there. So there's a little bit of trepidation that could this be a repeat of that. There's no doubt that Bernie Sanders is a credible threat at this point in time. On the other hand, you'll recall the campaign of Howard Dean. He got really big crowds at the start and then couldn't cross the finish line in the end.
Yeah, a lot to see how the Clinton campaign will turn this around, especially after these two hits today. NBC's Kristen Welker, as always, thank you very much. Good to see you. That brings us to today's Bing Pulse question. Is Bernie Sanders a threat to Hillary Clinton's campaign? The Pulse is now live, so join the conversation by heading to pulse.msnbc.com. We'll bring you updates on how you're voting throughout the next 2 hours here on this show. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is flying high after his latest controversy involving Fox News' Megyn Kelly. Last night, he was on the campaign trail in Michigan, and he spoke to local Republicans in Birch Run who enthusiastically received him. Trump spent the night reciting familiar talking points about being great, but he also attacked several of his fellow Republican candidates as well as Hillary Clinton. Take a listen to that.
Jeb Bush or Hillary or one of these politicians, all talk, no action. Lindsey Graham is at zero. Legitimately, I saw it on television. Zero. The other one, Perry, is at 2%. And he was at 5 when he started going after me. So something happened. Now it's Rand Paul. Can you believe it? He's the new one. I said, Rand, I've had you up to here. I've had you.
MSNBC's Jane Tim joins me now. Jane, thanks for being with us here. As we chat with you, we have to consider these two new polls that came out yesterday as both showing Trump still in the lead for now, but, somewhat closing in as far as Scott Walker, the other candidates. Is there any sense that maybe he's lost some momentum here, especially as some of these other candidates rise?
Trump's going to dominate the polls for a little while. He dominates the media cycle. He's, of course, very popular and, draws a certain crowd. But you have to look below the surface here, and that's where I see the real story, is that we saw of people in Iowa in one of those polls who actually watched the debate. They tied Scott Walker with Donald Trump, which shows that there is definitely an appetite for other people, and the more exposure the Republican voters get to Donald Trump, the more they may look elsewhere. And we also saw in the New Hampshire poll, we saw John Kasich, who only announced he was running for president a few weeks ago, shoot up in the polls into double digits. I think he came pretty close in there. And that's really important to look at. He's not well known around the country, but he comes from Ohio. It's a very important state. So clearly there's an appetite for other candidates. And I think that's where Donald Trump may start to dip in the polls.
And also a growing appetite when it comes to policy and his stand on that. Actually, during an interview on Fox News last night, Trump was asked about his previous stances on abortion and other areas where he doesn't exactly toe the line when it comes to base Republicans out there and that core, especially when he's talking about Planned Parenthood as well, not necessarily defending their aspect on abortion, but saying that they actually do good work out there outside of abortion. How big of a problem would this be for him?
It's shocking. You hear him defending Planned Parenthood. That's like opening a grenade for the rest of the Republican Party. But remember that Trump's fans, he's a candidate of personality. It's his success. It's making America great again, which of course he trademarked today, so no one else can do it. I mean, this is what they like. They like his straight talk, truth to power. It's all about how he tells it. The specific policies are less important at this stage, but it's going to alienate everybody else in his party.
Yeah, especially when he's saying, I'm a dealer. You don't go with plans. You go with a certain flexibility, and you sort of wheel and deal. So let's see how he goes about wheeling and dealing, especially when it comes to the issues at hand. MSNBC's Jane Tim, as always, thank you.
Thanks.
Jonathan Allen is the chief political correspondent for Vox. And Jonathan, we were just talking about Trump last night and his words about Planned Parenthood. Let's listen to what he had to say about that.
You have it as an abortion clinic. Now, that's actually a fairly small part of what they do. I'm totally against the abortion aspect of Planned Parenthood, but I've had many Republican conservative women come up and say Planned Parenthood serves a good function other than that one aspect.
All right, not necessarily something that you'd hear, on Planned Parenthood as far as the Republican base expects, but when it's Donald Trump and, his chosen words, especially when it comes to women, have been sort of in the microscope as of late. Is this something that's going to be a problem for Trump, or is he trying to reach out to the women out there that may be scurrying from his latest comments?
Look, I think he's taking a position that's popular with the electorate. 97% of what Planned Parenthood does is completely non-controversial, and in fact, I think supported by the vast majority of the public. If you look back in history, Prescott Bush, Jeb Bush's grandfather, raised money for the first Planned Parenthood fundraising drive. His father created Title X, under which Planned Parenthood gets most of its federal funding. So this is Planned Parenthood itself is not an issue. It is a vehicle through which people who are opposed to abortion are attacking legal abortions and attacking federal funding for it. So I think Donald Trump's actually going to find that he has a fair amount of support for that view.
All right, turning now to Hillary Clinton, especially when it comes to this latest poll, Bernie Sanders surpassing her, and we're talking about our Bing Pulse question today when we ask, is Bernie Sanders a threat to Hillary Clinton? There's that new poll from the Boston Herald and Franklin University that has Sanders ahead of Clinton. So talk a little bit about your thoughts on that, and especially when it comes to a lot of the Democratic voters who still think that Hillary will come out as the nominee, and the potential for a protest vote, I guess.
Yeah, if it's Hillary Clinton versus Bernie Sanders going down the stretch, don't put a lot of money on Bernie Sanders to win. The problem for Hillary Clinton is that it's exposing some vulnerability, which could encourage other candidates to get in, particularly Vice President Joe Biden. And of course, as a general matter, it shows her to be a little weaker heading into the general election if she does in fact get the nomination. If I were her folks, I'd be a little concerned about it. I'd be organizing like heck to try to make sure that I could win in every of the early states. But Bernie Sanders isn't going to beat her in states with large numbers of African Americans, with large numbers of Hispanics. New Hampshire is a particularly good state for him, extraordinarily white, and right next to his home state of Vermont.
Sure, her concerned about those poll numbers that Bernie Sanders is pulling in, as well as this email controversy that's still not going anywhere. Jonathan Allen from Vox, thank you very much for the perspective.
Take care.